A young girl, Ella, gently reached her hand into the water, and as if by magic, schools of fish swam eagerly toward her. The fishermen around her beamed with joy at this miraculous sight. With the girl by their side, every fishing trip became a great success. But her extraordinary abilities didn't stop there. 10 years ago, the island's leader, Jack, discovered a sunken ship near the shore. During the process, Jack accidentally injured himself, but when he returned, he was holding a baby girl Ella in his arms. To everyone's astonishment, Ella soon became known as the island's guardian angel. From that moment on, the island's only clinic was abandoned. No one needed medical treatment anymore. Whoever was sick or injured simply had to touch Ella, and they would be instantly healed. Even Jack's mother-in-law, who had suffered from dementia, was cured. She went on to become a teacher on the island. To keep miraculous Ella with them forever, the islanders decided to cut off all contact with the outside world. Whenever strangers approached, they would quietly ring an alarm and extinguish all lights, making it seem as if the island was deserted. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye, yet neither Jack nor his wife showed any signs of aging. One day, while sailing, Jack accidentally discovered another of her strange abilities. By simply placing her palm in the water, fish would instinctively gather around her. This ability transformed the island's economy, allowing its residents to live in abundance. But behind her miraculous powers lay a terrible secret. One day, Ella curiously reached her hand into a seal's nest. Normally aggressive, the seals did not attack her. Instead, they gathered around her arm as if drawn by an unseen force. She turned to show her friends this incredible sight. A young boy was being attacked by a group of seals. Ella's brows furrowed in distress. Instinctively, she clenched her fist. At that moment, all the seals around her suddenly collapsed, motionless. This cold, unfamiliar power terrified her. She begged her friends to keep it a secret. Thanks to Ella's healing powers, the islanders had grown fearless. Some even took up fighting as a form of entertainment, knowing that no matter how badly they were hurt, a simple touch from Ella would restore them. But the island's children soon invented an even more dangerous game. They began eating highly poisonous fruits so lethal that they would cause death within 15 minutes. The game was to race to Jack's house, knowing that as long as they made it to Ella's window in time, they would be saved. It seemed like they were always able to cheat death, until their luck finally ran out. That day, the island's fishing harvest was poor, and Jack had taken Ella out to sea. Meanwhile, one of the boys had eaten the poisonous fruit and was dying. With no other option, the villagers rushed him to the old doctor, but they were too late. Even though the doctor performed emergency surgery and removed the poison, the boy had already stopped breathing. When Jack finally returned with Ella, she desperately tried to save him, but her power could not bring back the dead. This tragedy sent Ella into deep self-blame. Convinced that she was responsible, she climbed to the mountaintop, found a dead seal, and tried to revive it with her healing touch. That night, Jack comforted Ella, telling her that none of this was her fault. But at that very moment, Susan, who was preparing dinner in the kitchen, accidentally cut her finger. Expecting the wound to heal instantly as always, she waited. But the cut didn't heal. Jack, unable to believe what was happening, made a small cut on his own hand with a knife. But his wound also remained unchanged. Ella's healing powers had vanished. The next day, Jack gathered all the islanders and explained the situation. He proposed suspending daily visits to give Ella time to rest, but the villagers strongly opposed this idea. They insisted that life should continue as usual, fearing that any special treatment would only put more pressure on Ella. During the heated debate, Jack's mother-in-law May finally stepped forward. "You and my son have done a wonderful job raising Ella," she said. "But she doesn't just belong to us anymore. We are all here because of the choice we made. The only reason this island has survived is because of her." The villagers murmured in agreement. "So we must decide," she continued. "Do we let Ella rest? Or do we carry on as if nothing has changed?" In the end, Jack had no choice but to accept the majority's decision. The next day, as usual, the villagers gathered outside Jack's house, each bringing gifts and words of encouragement, hoping to bring Ella comfort and praying for the return of her powers. At the same time, the Smith family, still mourning the loss of their son, their grief had made them disillusioned with the island, and they expressed their wish to leave. They promised Jack that they would never reveal Ella's existence to the outside world, but Jack refused their request. In the days that followed, the island slowly fell into chaos. Without Ella's powers, the only resident with dementia began showing symptoms again. The villagers, once united by prosperity, now faced an uncertain future without Ella's healing. Fear gripped them as they shared their anxieties and tried to comfort one another. But as the villagers grew desperate, the island's doctor was consumed with rage. After years of being cast aside and replaced by Ella's powers, he was finally needed again. Yet all he saw was the villagers' greed and selfishness. He was furious that they had forgotten their past and had become so dependent on Ella. Feeling completely abandoned, the doctor made a fateful decision. He quietly made his way to the Smiths' house. Perhaps they were the only ones on the island who still understood him. The doctor wanted to escape the island with his child and secretly secure a boat. However, to his surprise, the Smith family had already dismantled every usable piece of wood from their house and quietly built a small boat in secret. Meanwhile, late at night, Susan was tucking in the sleeping Ella when she noticed something astonishing. Her hand injury was healing rapidly. Jack soon discovered that his own knife wound was also fading away. Overjoyed, Susan immediately wanted to bring May over, hoping to cure her dementia, but Jack stopped her. He feared that if May regained her senses, she would tell the villagers about Ella's powers, and they would once again exploit her abilities for their own gain. Life and death were part of nature's order, and Jack wanted to protect his daughter. However, later that night, May's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. Seeing her mother so frail, Susan was overcome with grief. She secretly brought May into Ella's room. Not long after, May's mind cleared. At the same time, without Ella's healing powers, the islanders' fortunes declined. Their once prosperous harvest dwindled, and desperate, they turned to Jack, pleading for a solution. Jack knew this would happen. Just as he feared, May immediately revealed the truth about Ella to everyone. But there was a problem. Ella's healing powers now only worked when she was asleep. During the day, she was no different from an ordinary girl. That's when May had an idea. She handed Jack a bottle of sleeping pills. After much pressure from his wife, Jack reluctantly agreed. That night, Susan crushed the sleeping pills into a fine powder and mixed them into Ella's water. As soon as Ella fell into a deep sleep, the islanders carried her to the shore. The fishermen, who had been waiting, cast their nets in anticipation. Under May's urging, Jack carried his sleeping daughter into the water and gently placed her hand in the sea. The results were immediate. Fish swarmed toward the nets, and the fishermen worked frantically to haul in their catch. The villagers rejoiced. Their smiles returned. But as Jack watched, a deep conflict stirred within him. He wanted to take his daughter and leave the island. The doctor, who had learned the truth, also wanted to free Ella from the islanders' control. He secretly revealed the Smith family's escape plan to Jack, but May had been watching. That night, when the doctor returned home, he found May waiting for him. She spoke calmly, explaining that everything she did was for the island's future. Then she left. Soon after, the doctor collapsed in agony, foaming at the mouth. May had poisoned his drink. To cover up the truth, she informed the island's most radical figure, Captain Dyer. At her command, he set fire to the doctor's house. As the flames engulfed the building, the villagers began to realize that something was terribly wrong. By the time Jack arrived, holding his daughter in his arms, the Smiths had already set sail. The next morning, a speedboat suddenly approached the island. It turned out that after escaping, the Smith family had reported everything to the authorities. A female police officer arrived at the scene with Child Protection Agency personnel. At their strong insistence, Jack had no choice but to take them home to assess Ella's condition. As the news spread, island residents began to gather. Meanwhile, the doctor's son, Junior, secretly snuck onto the speedboat and radioed the dispatch center, requesting reinforcements. Then, he took a shotgun from the boat and quietly made his way toward Jack's house. At that moment, a social worker was talking to Ella face to face. Though everything seemed fine on the surface, something felt off. He decided to take Ella and her family away from the villagers and back to the police station for further investigation. The radical leader, David, even pulled out a gun and aimed it at the female officer. In the chaos, the officer accidentally shot Jack, while David was killed instantly by a gunshot to the head. Afterward, May and the others carried the severely wounded Jack back inside. Barely holding on, Jack begged them to bring Ella down so she could save him. He had to promise that he and his daughter would stay on the island forever. Once Jack agreed, May hurriedly prepared a cup of water laced with sleeping pills. Along with Susan, she tried to force Ella to drink the drugged water. Just then, Junior, having heard the commotion, burst into the room with his shotgun, demanding to know why Susan was doing this. He then turned the gun on May. While Susan tried to explain, May seized the opportunity to snatch Junior's weapon. But before she could act, Ella let out an ear-piercing scream. In that instant, everyone in the room collapsed lifelessly. Not just them, the entire island's population turned into corpses. Horrified by what she had done, Ella ran toward the sea, overcome with regret. As time passed, reinforcements from the dispatch center were about to arrive. Ella's story was like a beam of light that once illuminated the islanders' lives, yet it also exposed the darkest sides of human nature. Her ability, once a miraculous gift, gradually became a tool for the villagers' greed. Ella's tale was a mirror, reflecting people's desires and laziness. When her power became the foundation of the villagers' lives, they forgot the importance of their own efforts. Dependency became their way of life. When her power suddenly vanished, their fear and anxiety revealed how lost and desperate people become when they can no longer rely on an external force.